And Tina, after
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, okay, good. Oh, I love shark. Yeah, I love baby shark as well. Yeah. Okay,
Switch to Amica for computer service, affordable rates, and every possible discount. Look for the Amica banner on this page and get your auto insurance quote today.
My name is Dale Kaczynski. I volunteer with United Way to help the homeless in my community learn computer skills and build a basic resume. I don't just wear the shirt.
Yeah, okay, volunteer, live united.
There are still folks coming into the room, so I'm going to give everyone another minute or two before we start.
Alexa off.
Just a reminder, please mute your mics when you're not speaking. Thank you. Okay, to be respectful of people's time, I think we're going to start now, and it's recorded. So for folks that get here a little late, I will post the session on our website so that they can catch up. I am, for those who don't know me, I'm Tina Quagliato Sullivan. I am the city's Director of Disaster Recovery. I am joined by Melanie Akobe, who is the ARPA director for the city, and Ed Whitley, who is the city's Deputy Director of Neighborhood Services. Welcome, neighborhood councils. We have a lot of representation tonight, so I'm really excited to see that. That's great. So I'm assuming that everyone got the memo we sent around via email, but I'm going to share it real quick just so that folks who maybe didn't see it or haven't had a lot of time to review it can see it. So these are the entities that are eligible for the $100,000 that's being allocated to neighborhood councils. If you're not on that list, then you're not getting allocated funding as far as we know. So we just want to make sure, pretty much everyone I'm seeing is on that list. So, but I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. Moving on, what we had sent previously gave a brief overview of the process that we are anticipating undertaking. For folks that have, for neighborhood councils that have received CDBG funding in the past, it's fairly similar to the CDBG process. What we're sort of anticipating is that each neighborhood council will consult with both their residents and their boards and will develop what's the scope of work and also a budget for the items that they would like to utilize the $100,000 for. That budget and scope would then be submitted to the City of Springfield for review and approval. Once the budget and the scope of work have been reviewed and approved, then the city would enter into a contract with the neighborhood council for that funding. Typically, the way it works is the city pays out funding to neighborhood councils in two ways. One is on a reimbursement basis, and what that means is neighborhood councils basically lay the funding out for whatever the activity is or for a portion of the activity, and then they submit their receipts and invoices on the back end and get reimbursed for that funding. We recognize that lots of neighborhood councils are fairly small. They are mostly volunteer entities, and so there aren't large bank accounts there. So we also make the option available of small advance payments for approved budgets and scopes in contracts. And so the way that typically works is the council submits an invoice for a portion of their overall contract amount, the items that they're going to utilize that portion of funding for. And then the city reviews that, approves it, pays out that advance amount. Once the council has spent that amount, they submit receipts and documentation to the city showing how they spent that funding. And then the city would approve additional advance amounts. So that's typically the two ways that the city pays out funding to neighborhood councils. I do want to say there are some neighborhood councils that have already reached out and asked about projects that potentially it would not be the council carrying out the work. It would actually be the city carrying out the work. And so that process might differ. But right now, I think we're going to sort of focus tonight on when the council is requesting funding for the council to carry out activities. When it's something where they want the city to carry out an activity, I think we'll sort of address that on an individual basis with that council. So that's sort of a high level overview of what we anticipate the process being. Our hope tonight is that we can get questions from councils. I think some will probably be able to answer tonight. Some we may not be able to answer tonight and may have to get back to you with some answers. That's part of why we're recording the session. We're also taking notes. So if we have to get back to you, we can, and we'll follow up on that. I think the other piece that I want to make sure we say is folks should not undertake work until they have an approved executed contract. So we want to just make that clear. And then I don't know if Melanie or Ed want to add anything before we jump into letting you guys ask questions.
Nope, nothing to add. Excited to work with you all. And if you have any questions, we'll be happy, like Tina just mentioned, to try to provide an answer if we can, and if not, as soon as possible.
Okay. And so I think the other piece that I want to be clear about is our intention is to try to provide technical assistance to you as you're working through this process. That will be provided by both myself, Ed Whitley, and the various staff in the ARPA departments as needed. But you know, we're sort of not saying that you have to know all the answers or know how to go through this process, particularly for councils that have never received CDBG funding before or received grant funding from the city before. We know we have some newbies here. So our intention is to try to guide you through this process as much as possible. We may hold additional question and answer sessions if we think they're needed, or smaller group sessions as they're needed. So that being said, I think we probably want to open up for questions. What I do want to say is what I'm going to ask is for folks to raise their hands on Zoom. So if you don't know how to do that, if you're on a computer, you would go to the little reactions button, and there's a button that says raise hand. I'll call on you. Once we do that, you ask your question. We'll try to provide an answer. If we can't provide an answer, we'll let you know, and then we'll move on to the next question. I think we want to stay focused tonight on the $100,000. There are some councils here that have other grants going or other grant applications in. We don't want to veer off into that. We want to stay really focused on what we're here to talk about tonight. So, okay. Moving on to questions. I see Betsy Johnson from Armory Quadrangle. Betsy, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. My sort of two-part questions. What is the time frame for this grant in terms of how, how soon do you expect it to start and how soon can it be spread over? And can it be applied for in increments? In other words, can we put in for an initial 40,000 and then later, as we really figure out more what we're doing, put in for another grant? So I'll leave it at with those two questions right there.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I think the ARPA regulations, and I'm going to ask Melanie to jump in and correct me if I'm saying something wrong. The ARPA regulations say we have to have you under contract by 2024, and funds have to be fully expended by 2024. So I think we're hoping to have you under contract.
Someone is not muted and I can't hear you as a result.
That's right. I can't hear either. Somebody's not muted.
Okay. Yep. I think folks just muted. So ARPA.
Can you repeat that then?
Yep, ARPA guidelines require that we have to have folks, everything under contract by 2024, and that we have until 2026 to fully expend the funds. So while we have until 2024 to get you under contract, I think we want to get you under contract before that. So, but I don't think we're expecting you to kind of turn it around in a month or so. I think we recognize this is going to take some time to get you all under contract. As far as partial increments, I don't think that we'll have an issue with that. I think we would probably then enter into a contract for whatever the initial amount is and then do an amendment to increase the contract once we know what the additional amounts and what that scope and budget will look like. Okay, next question, Jose Claudio from New North Citizens Council.
Good evening, everyone. Tina, I just have one question. I know under CDBG, when we get grants, we got to get 2 or 3 people that come in and give us bids for a specific project. Is it going to be the same, more than one bid for the city?
So my understanding of the procurement requirements around ARPA is that expenditures over $10,000 will require multiple bids. So yes, unless it's a construction related item, and then that's anything over $2,000. So we can provide some additional guidance around what procurement guidelines look like. But I think our goal is to also try to talk councils through that, right? Like, we're not just going to hand you a page of guidelines and then say good luck. We're anticipating that you're probably going to have some questions as you're moving through this process. And as we're reviewing your scopes and budgets, our plan is to consult with you around what will be required for you to meet your contractual obligations. And then once we get to that point, we'll probably set up a meeting between my office, the ARPA office, and the compliance office to make sure that everyone's on the same page. Okay.
Tina, I just a heads up that, you know, maybe to make sure that any contractor get to make sure that they are secretary of state, or there are, you know, contractors that are legit. You know, there's a lot of people that come in and try to not be legit, and sometimes you got a hard time dealing with them. So please, just be careful of that.
Yes, and I should say, you know, we have some lists of contractors that we utilize for other programs that we know are insured and licensed, so we can certainly make those available as need be to folks as well. Now, that's mostly around construction, but I think we can try to work with folks depending on what they're doing to help them identify contractors that are and vendors that we're aware of that do the sorts of work that they're looking for as well. Okay, Barbara Gresham, Old Hill. Oh, Barbara, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tina. So I think 2 questions. So do we have to get quotes, like 3 quotes, like we do for?
Yeah, so like I just said to Jose, I think it's going to depend on what the council is doing. But yeah, most likely quotes are going to be required over certain dollar threshold for certain purchases. And so I think we'll probably release a little bit more guidance around what triggers quotes and what dollar thresholds trigger quotes.
Okay, so my next question, it says up to 100,000. So if you don't use all of that, what happens?
I don't know. I mean, I imagine I'm assuming most councils are going to try to utilize that funding
Okay.
Because there's such a need. But if you don't, then I imagine the city would allocate it elsewhere to be used for other items of need.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Next question, Beth Hogan. I think, Beth, you're East Forest Park. Is that accurate?
Yes, hello, everyone. First of all, Tina and Melanie, thank you for taking the time to do this. We're very excited. This is a great thing for our city, and I'm sure all the other associations are excited as well. My question is, we are a baby to this, right? We just, for our first time, experienced our first $1,000 one, which Tina, you were just so wonderful helping Frank and I. So I'm excited to see a handbook or guidelines that will be able to guide us, which is awesome. I was wondering if you could put together maybe like a cheat sheet of recommendations or suggestions, how you think we could use this. And then I love the point where you started off the meeting with, the best practices, meeting with the neighbors, getting feedback. Would you be able to put a PowerPoint presentation that we could use in our meeting with the facts and what we should say and not say, and just help us guide how to ask those questions and monitor that conversation? Because $100,000 is a lot of money, which is awesome. But I think getting neighbors' feedback, especially us who really have never really done this and that large amount, people are going to be coming up with so many ideas, so I don't know if you could put a PowerPoint besides the guidelines and the handbooks that you're going to send to the civic associations, but maybe a two for us would be great. So when we have our meeting, there's a PowerPoint, or maybe you'd like to come to a meeting because you guys are the experts. Just some suggestions and things to think out how everybody else is going to do it. Maybe that could be a conversation we all have right now. Like, how do you want to ask the neighbors, right? Or suggestions and best practices that you may have.
Sure. So I should say, I just want to make sure that you folks received the memo we sent around that had the eligible categories and suggested basically areas of focus. Did you all get that?
I'm checking.
Okay.
Yes, for
Yes, it was attached. I have it. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So it sounds like maybe you're asking for something more than that, and we can kind of talk internally about what we think.
I was just like maybe a PowerPoint presentation for our meeting, right? We all have our meetings, and that would be the best way to engage our neighbors. Sure. And if we were consistent across the board in the city, because I'm sure each neighborhood is going to get a lot of feedback, right? And I know neighbors all chat. So if we can have a consistent approach, I think it would only help our city on the way we communicate this, because it's already been communicated on Facebook with a lot of people, and we didn't even know anything about it. And people are coming to me already with what they see other neighborhoods or conversations, not from the civic associations, by the way, just people. And I just think we should be professional from our organizations, how we handle it,
Sure. So I'm sure we could put something together for you folks to utilize for presentation.
Just a PowerPoint that we could use in our meetings, and it might be great if we're all consistent when we ask everyone, right?
Yep, sure. I'm sure we can put something.
Okay. I can help. I'm good at PowerPoint. I can help.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also seeing in the chat box a question from Liz from McKnight, just asking for that to be resent to McKnight. So we will resend that around just to make sure everyone receives that. If folks have specific email addresses that they'd like that sent to, just enter that in the chat box, and we'll try to get those at the end so we can make sure everyone receives that. And we can put that that information up on our website to create a little page just for this particular thing. So all of the information is accessible in one place to neighborhood councils and to the public. Okay, moving on, Roberta Kilkenny. Roberta, I'm sorry, I don't know which council you're from. So if you could just.
McKnight Neighborhood Council.
Hi.
It's Roberta Kilkenny and Stephen Howard. We're both on the board at the council. I'd like to say hello to everyone and a special thank you to Tina for the early morning conversation we had today.
Great.
You start work very early. I have two questions. I know you don't want us to speak about the other applications that may be out there, but I would just like clarification on whether what we do with the 100,000 can complement so long as it doesn't duplicate what we may have in other applications. That's the first question.
That's a great question. And I think we would love for whatever you're doing to complement your other work, but yes, not to duplicate it. So I think we would encourage folks to, if they've already have these sorts of activities underway, to build those activities out, maybe not try rebuilding the wheel, but complement what you're already doing. And obviously no duplication, that is a thing. Do you have another question?
Yes, the second one was if from the 100,000, can part of it be used to cover the cost of internet plans?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy Brown from East Springfield.
I'm coming. Here I am. Thank you. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, everybody. Financial question. I know with community development block grant money, the city will not reimburse for taxes that we paid. Not a big issue for East Springfield because we're a 501c3 and we have some tax exempt status. There are some neighborhood councils, I think, that do not have tax exempt status. How do they handle that?
Sure. So that's actually, Melanie, I don't know if you can answer that question. Typically, the city doesn't pay sales tax.
No, and that is one of the things where the guideline is very specific that recipients should not be using the funds to pay off debt, but we are technically the recipients. With regards to taxes for sub-recipients of us, I don't believe it has specific guidelines saying that it cannot be used for that, but we can certainly review that and follow up after this meeting with those answers.
Thank you.
Kathy, as always, we appreciate your very specific financial questions.
Well, you know, that's the way it goes.
Someone's got to do the details.
Yeah, gotta go. The devil's in it, so.
Okay, Councillor Govan from Indian Orchard.
Thank you so much. Thank you for doing this too. And I really just want to commend Melanie and Tina. You guys are doing a yeoman's job of putting this program together. And like we said in Melanie's meeting the other day, I said that we're flying the plane while we're building it. So you all are doing an amazing job, and I thank you for your perseverance. So my questions were, and Melanie, we had this conversation the other day regarding the small businesses. So if we apply, say, for a grant for, say, $20,000, $30,000 to do maybe a program, how soon would we be able to get the money? That's one question.
Okay. So I think the first thing, so I think we can make payments relatively quickly once we have you under contract. It's usually about a week to 2 week turnaround, depending on when the payment gets in and when the next batch is scheduled by the city. But I think it's more about getting to contract. And so I think it's going to depend how quickly you can consult with your residents, sort of tell us what kind of consultation you did with residents and your board, and then getting an approved scope and budget. So if you want to do what one of the other one of the other people talked about, doing sort of a smaller scope and budget to start to get some funding approved, that's probably a quicker way to get to contract.
Okay, yeah.
Probably at this point.
But count on a month for the contract turnaround.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's never been quicker.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
No offense, but count on a month.
Yeah. And we have to, we have to have a lawyer review the contract format from today. So we're working on that now. So I would say, yeah, we're probably looking at least 30 to 45 days.
Okay, because I know that we have, Indian Orchard Citizens Council has been having conversations with the residents, like when the mayor came out and had the community conversations. And so we'd love to start our computer program for our seniors. We'd love to get that going, and it's already in the scope that we want to provide. So maybe something like that. Another question was, can we use funds for programs already in existence, kind of like to supplement, for example, the food truck festival, right? Last year, we were able to get an earmark to put on our annual food truck festivals. This year, we don't have that. And usually we take donations from our businesses and the community. And however, we're in a, I won't say recession, but almost. And people really can't afford to give the way they used to. So I'm wondering if we can use the money for that.
Yeah, so I believe we can, unless Melanie, you're correcting me otherwise. I think we can.
Yeah, so long as, again, we want to make sure that whatever existing programming that you may already have, if there are other funding sources, that we're not duplicating. So we want to be very careful with if it's a completely separate funding source and you may be short, and that's something that you would like to be complemented by ARPA, then certainly. And it's something that helps and aids the community, absolutely. One thing I did want to add, Tina, I don't recall whether when they submit the scope, whether there is documentation of the outreach that has been done to the community, because that would be something that ARPA guidelines do want us to, not specifically down to every person you spoke to, but at least just general understanding of what were the efforts that you took to try to outreach to your community. So those are the type of things that the Treasury and ARPA is really interested in knowing.
I think we'll probably in the next week or two try to get you maybe some recommendations for best practices, and also maybe I think our goal is to try to put together some standard forms for reimbursement. So that we're kind of all using the same thing.
Right. So one last question. So the bid for services, if I need to get 3 bids, you said that if it's over $10,000, correct? So if I want to get 5 computers that maybe are $5,000, I don't need 3 separate.
No, but what you do need to do is sort of follow best business practices. So you need to give us some sort of explanation about why you chose the vendor you did. And I think we're gonna, I know our compliance office is putting together some guidance around procurement for small businesses and nonprofits. So I think we're just gonna sort of supply that to you folks as well.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions, unless something else comes up. And again, I just want to commend the ARPA team. You guys are doing an amazing job. Thank you.
Okay, Frank Ryan, East Forest Park. And you are muted, so just make sure you unmute.
Okay, Tina, let me affirm that Beth Hogan is so correct. You have been a marvelous help to us. I have a general question. We've been working on this for quite a while, anticipating that it's coming. And so most of the money we are requesting would come through DPW, the park. We even have a proposal that perhaps the bus company will pick up something. So when you're looking for multiple bids, do we bring such things as crosswalks, sidewalk, street lights, road repair, bus route?
I think probably if what you want to utilize, if what East Forest Park wants to utilize the $100,000 for is work that the city would carry out, we'd probably be looking at a different process. And so I think we probably want to talk offline about what that looks like, but what it probably looks like is you sort of submitting that request to us, and also an outline of the consultation that you did with the public. And then us going to DPW to put together, DPW or parks or whomever, to put together an estimate and and go from there. So sort of probably more similar to the process we've been undertaking under the Neighborhood Recovery Fund, where we're going out to take a look at the items that you folks are requesting and then putting together budgets and then getting that approved. And the city is actually holding the funding and handling all of the bidding and things like that. So I think we'll talk offline about that, and we can kind of also put together some outlines of what that would look like for councils that are looking at doing that. But probably if the city is carrying out the activity, you won't have to get bids for that sort of thing. The city would do that in accordance with public procurement rules.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Elizabeth Lederman from McKnight.
Yes, that's actually Letterman.
Oh, sorry, Letterman.
Could you clarify again about the 3 quotes in the procurement? Because earlier you said greater than 2,000 and greater than 10,000.
Sure.
Yeah.
2,000 is for construction, 10,000 is for goods and services.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yep. I see G. Rivera, and I'm not sure which council you're from, so if you could just introduce yourself, let us know.
Yep. Hi, everybody. Gladys Rivera, Lower Liberty Heights. I had to join with my cell phone. So thank you for hosting it. A few questions, right? So we're kind of new to this, and my questions are, and I think Ed is on the phone. Usually we do the scope of work, we do all the contract. Is that what I'm hearing, that we need to get that submitted by June 30th and get that approved? Or is that different?
Yeah, I think what you might be confusing this with is the Neighborhood Recovery Fund, where those applications are due by June 30th. This is the $100,000 that's allocated to each specific neighborhood council. And while we will be looking for you to put together a scope and budget, we are not expecting you to do that by June 30th.
But that's related to the community, those of us who get community development block grant money. Could
So
he
there are 2
clarify
buckets.
this? Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I understand. There's 2 buckets. We'll
Yeah.
still can submit the CBDG as we do every year. And then this 100,000 is a new scope and budget for that 100,000. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, just needed to wrap my head around that.
Yep.
And with that scope of work for the 100,000 and getting estimates, and I'm just going to be very blunt. We have no electronic equipment. And I know that back in February, Ed had sent out an email about, hey, what inventory do you have? And I just threw a big list of, we need internet, we need computers, we need phones, we need copier. How because of that need that we have, I guess, what is the best way? Can I just take that email and submit it? Or do I have to draft a bigger scope and budget for that 100,000? Like right now, we can easily submit that because it's an immediate need, right?
Yeah. So I think you're gonna have to, I haven't seen the email that you've sent, but you're probably gonna, and so I don't know. It's hard for me to say if it's gonna need to be separate, but it probably is going to need to be a little bit more detailed than an email. And maybe we can work on getting you folks some kind of form or example of what we look for when we're looking at scope and budget, and that might be helpful for you. And we can work on that.
So if you could send a template so that I can input all the bullet points that are on that document, because without the electronic equipment that we need to operate, we can't be successful in, doing programming and activities, because we're really using our own personal equipment.
Yep, sure.
Okay, so you'll send the template so that we can use that, and then with that CBDG and that scope that we do, it's like we have programming that we forecast, right, into next year. Based on those programming, either continuing or new programming, we can use some of the $100,000 to say, hey, if we're gonna do a Hispanic Heritage Month in October, and we need X amount of dollars for that awareness Hispanic Heritage Month, how do I forecast, the actual dollars that we need? So if we bring, someone in to volunteer, no cost, but what about food, right?
Mhm.
Can that 100,000 help us with, food
Yeah.
for
so-
an event like that?
Right, and so as far as I know, ARPA guidelines do not say you can't pay for food. After I talked to compliance about this morning, our agreement was that food could be covered under this, assuming that it is reasonable, right? Like you can't go out and buy lobster dinners and filet mignon for everyone. It's public money.
Okay.
But if food is sort of ancillary to the event and a necessary component to make sure folks turn out to the event and it's reasonable, then yeah, we think we can cover that as part of the 100,000.
Okay, and I have other ones, but I think maybe I'll take it offline once I get the template and gather more information. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, sounds good. So I see some hands up and I'm not sure if they're additional questions or if they're folks that I already answered questions for and they just didn't get a chance to put their hands down. So Beth, do you have any additional questions?
No, I'm all set, but this was very helpful. I did see that guideline, so that's great. I don't know if we somehow can communicate and share best practices with everyone, because there's a lot of great ideas with all these associations. I don't know if you have a plan to maybe, I don't know how we can share it all and see it, from a security perspective, like on a team site or a Google app or something, where East Forest Park is doing this is doing this, because I think these groups of people have so many great ideas. And I would love to pick their brains and know what they're doing. So
yeah, I think definitely once we have actual scopes and budgets from folks, we can put up on our website. That's easy. What I could also probably share are, a lot of the eligibility for this grant is comparable to what some of the neighborhood councils just did under our municipal vulnerability preparedness grant. And so I could probably share some of the ideas or proposals that came in through that, because there was some really good stuff that came in there. So we could probably post or share some of that too.
That's a fabulous idea. And I can just imagine there's years of experience on this call with so many people being board members and then so much to share, so it would be awesome to really help our city. So thank you. Again,
yeah,
Melanie, it would be nice working with you. Bear with Frank and I. We always have lots of questions because we really have not done a lot of grants. So thanks again.
Yeah, I think probably also I'll send an email around that has all of the neighborhood councils' contact information and their contact person, so that folks can kind of just share information and reach out if there's a particular person.
Okay.
We want to ask questions of, or-
Ed, will you be holding a meeting for all the civic associations to get together on this, and maybe we can brainstorm? That might be a nice event as well.
I think Ed is on his phone, so I don't know if he has the ability to speak. He sent a message, but
okay.
I'll touch base with him tomorrow, and I'm sure we can do something.
Great. Thank you all.
Sure. Roberta, do you have additional questions?
Yes, before I turn the mic over to Stephen Howard, who has a question, I would just like to ask Ed if, when he's able, if he could send out an email to clarify the status of the information on office equipment that we sent to him a few months ago, and whether or not there's separate funding for that, or if that's coming out from the 100,000, because I think there may be some, I know I'm confused about what the status is of that. Okay, so, and also if Ed has a touch tone phone, he can press *6 to toggle mute off and on. He may not have a phone that can do that, but some people can do that on their smartphones. And I'll turn it over to Stephen now.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Stephen Howard McKnight. Two quick questions. Well, thanks for the information. The memo that, or the email that you sent out, would it be appropriate for the councils to share that with our membership or the people who live within our jurisdictions?
Sure, yeah, anything the city puts out is public information.
Okay. Second question. There are a few folks who appear to be financially strapped and may also be mobile impaired. And because of those two combinations, their property may not be kept up as is required with proper lawn cutting and so forth. If we were to identify those individuals, not that I'm looking to provide services for folks who don't need it, but if we could identify those people who are both financially strapped and mobile impaired, can funding come through the council to help assist them in keeping their property maintained, like lawn mowing and so forth?
Possibly, let us look into that and get back to you on the details of that, but I think that's probably a possibility, yeah.
Yeah, because your criteria right now refers to vacant lots.
Yeah. Yep, so I think that's probably definitely a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
More definitive answer on that.
Thank you.
Sure. Betsy?
Well, one of the questions I had was I did want to get clarification that it'll be a whole separate process that will deal with Ed. For those of us who have traditionally got community development block grant money, we can assume that this is not superseding that, and it's not a lot of money, but that little bit of money can continue to pay the rent and things like that. So the main thing is we're looking at mainly using the funds to hire staff to be able to continue to do our outreach and organize some of, help the volunteers organize programs and stuff. Are there requirements related to hiring that we need to, or guidelines related to hiring that we need to be following?
Yeah, let me check in with compliance on that and we'll get you a more definitive answer on that. I think if you're paying stipends like we would typically do, or it'll probably follow similar to what we do with CDBG or what we do with MVP. But if you're talking about paying out like salaries and fringe and benefits, we're probably talking about a whole different ballgame.
And need the guidelines as to when the city would want us to be hiring somebody as an employee as compared to being a consultant / stipends. Those are guidelines that, I mean, it was one thing during this current little grant, we knew we weren't ever paying out that much money to a single person, but this could be actually paying some individuals salary level.
Sure. So yeah,
Okay.
let us get some guidance on that and some clarification.
Okay. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Barbara, do you have additional questions?
Thank you, Tina. So are the council responsible for filling out taxes, filing taxes, or the city does that?
What do you mean by filing taxes? Like
Like
on behalf of your entity?
Yes.
You would still maintain all responsibility for what you need to file on behalf of your entity. Yeah.
All right. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Beth, do you have additional questions?
I'm sorry, I have one last one.
Sure.
Could you share with us information about being a nonprofit so we wouldn't have to pay the taxes? Or I don't know if everyone, who some groups may and may not be, and how that works. Maybe that's an Ed Whitley question, but if that information can be forwarded, so that might help us.
So about how an entity files for 501
or becoming a nonprofit that, Kathy Kathy Brown, maybe you can help me with that question, because I've asked you that and you've given me guidance.
Okay.
I'm curious about that too, because
Kathy?
neighborhood associations by law are have to be 501c4s.
And I know Kathy's had some experience with that. Maybe you can help ask my question, Kathy?
I should say, Betsy, I know some neighborhood councils have consulted with attorneys and have gotten advice that they can be 501c3s, is my understanding.
Our attorney said we had to be a 501c4.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
They got a different.
We're a 501c3 since 1976.
yeah, there are definitely multiple neighborhood organizations that are 501c3. So I think it's sort of, I think the ones that have consulted with attorneys to file that. But I'm sure we can tell you, we can sort of at least give you some direction around who you would consult with in order to do that. I don't know if we can give you legal advice, but I think we could at least tell you who or how an organization might go about doing that. Okay, I don't see additional hands. So, oh, Beth, do you have is that another hand, another question?
No, I'm all set, thanks.
Okay. And so I think if there are no additional questions, we'll probably wrap up. I'll place this recorded session on our website as well as the memo, and then we'll start circulating some information. And oh, Roberta, maybe you have another question?
Yeah, it's more a suggestion, please. For the forms that we may need to fill out, please don't make them as computer heavy as the one that's due at the end of June. I think for people who are not accustomed to doing data entry, it's a bit of a hurdle. And I know you're available to assist, but I think that can be avoided if the way that we have to do the input into the form is less computer dependent. I don't know if you know what I mean. The one for the end of the month is kind of a data entry form, as opposed to a PDF form that you can just type into and print separately. And
okay, I will see what we can do to try to make it simplistic. I can't promise that it won't be on Excel or Word. But let me see what we can do.
No, that's fine. It's just the one that's due in 2 weeks is totally browser-based, typing into a data input form.
Okay, yeah, I'll get my hands on what you're talking about. And just we'll try to put something together that's hopefully relatively simple. Kathy, do you have a question?
Just for clarification, I might be out of the loop, but what form or what grant is being spoken of or was just being spoken of?
I'm not sure.
Are we trying to figure that out?
Yeah.
The NERF form, the long form version of the NERF form is all browser-based data entry form, which for someone who's not computer savvy can be a challenge. And I'm just trying to prevent them all from going into Tina's office to ask her to fill out the form.
Yeah.
So most of the other forms we've had are simpler to fill out. This one was.
So I will say the long form, we did a short NERF form that was intended for neighborhood councils and was a lot simpler. The longer form was more intended for businesses and nonprofits, but there are some neighborhood councils that are filling it out for various reasons. And so I can understand how that's a little more cumbersome. I don't anticipate any of the forms that we would release would be in that format. So I think that is at least, I hope that can ease your mind a little bit. I do also want to say Ed Whitley is taking note of the questions that are coming through for him. He said he will touch base with folks tomorrow to answer some of those questions. So if you've asked a specific question that was directed to Ed or that Ed can answer, he'll sort of touch base with you tomorrow to get you some answers. Lewis, I just see you raised your hand. Can you just let us know what organization you're from and then ask your question? And you are muted, so just make sure you unmute yourself. If you're on a phone and not a computer, I think that is *6. So
Okay.
you're good.
Luis Diaz, Lower Liberty Heights. And I just wanted to find out if the nonprofit, the churches will fit into there. They will fall into that category.
So the 100,000 is being allocated to neighborhood councils. There are various eligible categories which they can then submit for funding under. I don't know, I don't believe direct assistance to churches is an eligible expense. But there are certainly categories that folks may work with religious organizations on around outreach and things like that, or assistance to folks. But I direct assistance to religious organizations is not eligible. In terms of direct assistance to nonprofits, again, I think there would be categories that folks may want to work with nonprofits on, or activities that folks may want to work with nonprofits on. But if there are nonprofits that need direct assistance, I think we'd probably be encouraging them to actually fill out an ARPA application for nonprofit assistance themselves.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. Okay, so before we end, any other questions? No, I just want to double check the chat. I think we are good. And oh, no, Betsy's got another question. Nope. Or did you just forget to put your hand down?
That's a clap, not a hand.
Okay, sorry. All right, well, thank you, folks.
That was doing this.
And we will all definitely be in touch. So I will talk to you all soon. And thank you to Ed for answering questions through the chat, and he will touch base with folks tomorrow too. Okay, thank you.
Great job, Tina and Melanie. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.